A new report on Capitol security recommends significant changes that could limit Americans' access to the area following the January 6th riots. Now, this was a report ordered by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She wanted to see what type of flaws there were in the security surrounding the Capitol, especially after the riots took place on January 6th. And the report was led by former Hurricane Katrina commander and retired Lieutenant General Russell Honore. And these are his recommendations, not all of them, but the ones that I think are worth highlighting. So the final report calls on more than 1,000 Capitol police officers, a dedicated quick reaction force, so hiring more of them, and the installation of retractable fencing around the complex. So the retractable fencing, I want to know what that means, what it looks like. I know that if you before January 6th, if you wanted to visit the Capitol, even go inside the Capitol building, you had access to it. And based on this report, it seems like access will be restricted. And I don't know to what extent. It's unclear which of these recommendations they're going to implement. But one of my previous fears is already confirmed. They are planning on hiring more police officers. They're also doing away with certain oversight, which I'll get to in just a second, regarding whether certain law enforcement can unilaterally take action against what they perceive to be as a threat. I'll give you the details in a minute, but I wanted to get your initial thoughts so far.
And I think anybody who's an avid listener or watcher of MSNBC or CNN should close their ears right now. But I happen to be somebody who was quite impressed that day that people could actually get that close to senators and Congress people like that, right? I was actually shocked and heartened by the fact that these people could be touched. Like these people who come out and play with people's lives every single day. And again, I don't agree with any of the people that were at the Capitol, but I automatically could see the happenings of that day coming back to haunt us in this very way, an overreach, an overreaction with more police presence, more military presence, treating the White House again, which is supposed to be a monument to the people of this country, because we're allegedly a self-government, I guess. Treating that place like as if it's some sort of military fort or military base. When again, these people make decisions every single day that affect the lives of everyday Americans, and to treat that place as if it deserves to have some force field from the very people that they've been charged to govern, I wholeheartedly disagree. Obviously, what happened that day was horrible. Obviously, those people who behaved that way should be dealt with and pay the repercussions, whether that be jail, fines, whatever the case may be. But the idea that you would treat, the White House and the Capitol like Fort Bragg now or Fort Knox is patently ridiculous. Again, this is supposed to be a self-governing democracy. Those people in the government shouldn't be treated like, Fabergé eggs.
No, you're so right. And why should law-abiding, ordinary Americans suffer the consequences of what clearly was a failure on the part of law enforcement that day, right? Whether it's Capitol Police, the National Guard, the Pentagon. I mean, we literally have hundreds of intelligence agencies, not just a few of them, like hundreds of them, okay? Constantly being surveilled. They had the intelligence about what the potential threats were that day. They knew. And so the question isn't, how much of a threat are ordinary citizens and how much do we need to do to ensure that there's a giant barrier between the people and the very monuments that are supposed to represent a government by those people, right? We shouldn't be having those discussions. It reminds me of every other security failure that's happened, and then how everyone else has to suffer the consequences of those failures, right? So what I'm seeing based on these recommendations is more resources pumped into law enforcement. Let me just give you the details, there's more. The most significant recommendation is the establishment of a dedicated quick reaction force for all of Washington, D.C. to respond to developing crises. Do we not have enough of these people? We need to have another government agency to do this, really? Okay, let me give you more. Honore's team proposed 3 options: a force consisting of multiple law enforcement agencies that is granted legal authorities and funding, a force run by the DC National Guard that draws from National Guard units across the country, and a permanent military police battalion housed within the DC National Guard. So it's like these people F up, and then we punish them with more manpower and more funding. That's what we do. And congratulations to all the anti-government militias that showed up to the Capitol that day to engage in that riot. Your anti-government mission seems to have failed because now they're doubling down on more government, more surveillance, and less access to the Capitol. These people are, anyway, go ahead, Woz.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see the types of things that our government officials are more than willing to always throw more money at the problem, right? When it comes to helping normal everyday people, the idea that you would just throw money at them and their problems would be solved, which they would, by the way, just so we're clear, like the problems of rent and tuition and groceries and different things are problems that absolutely would be solved by money. And the problem of law enforcement just being derelict in their duties, inadequate at the job that they're tasked with performing, would not be solved by giving them more money, more manpower, by just like, guys, just do your jobs, man. A bunch of people failed and didn't do what they're paid to do that day. And that's why it looked as embarrassing. That's why it was such a debacle. That's why it was so embarrassing that day. But like this idea that what was gonna be, what's gonna solve this is just more people doing the same is ridiculous to me.
Yeah, like are they going to do a better job of getting white supremacists out of their ranks? I mean, there were Capitol Police taking selfies with these guys during the riot. Like, are they looking into that? I mean, it also proposes this. This, of course, they won't. And then there are a few things in here that I'm fine with. Like they propose giving US Capitol Police the authority to request support from the National Guard outside of law enforcement without pre-approval from the Capitol Police Board. And they're clear about it only happening in extraordinary emergency circumstances. Like, I don't really understand the bureaucracy behind that. Like, if you need backup, can't you just hit the right government agency up and be like, yo, I need backup, this is a crisis. So if there's an issue with too much bureaucracy and the recommendation is to get rid of that bureaucracy, fine, I'm okay with that. But another recommendation calls for Department of Defense directives to be amended to allow the head of the DC National Guard to retain emergency authority to quell large-scale civil disturbances. I'm gonna need a little more elaboration on that one. Like, what does that mean? Right, so I don't like the idea of providing more power and less oversight to law enforcement agencies. I don't like the idea of pumping more money into a failing system. I think that there needs to be more of an investigation into who serves within the ranks of these multiple police departments or law enforcement agencies. Those are things that we can do, but providing more barriers, making sure that everyone else suffers the consequences of their failure is wrong. And for all the Republicans out there, like Kevin McCarthy, for instance, who are whining and crying about how, oh my God, this is so unfair. They're shutting down access to ordinary Americans. Look at these terrible Democrats. No, it's because you guys emboldened the behavior that took place that day and continue to make excuses for it, which is why A, that event happened, and B, people are terrified that it's gonna happen again because the Republican Party refuses to just clearly and unequivocally shout that nonsense down. They won't do it. So, I mean, it's ridiculous that they're now acting as though they're the real victims here, when in reality, we wouldn't be in this situation in the first place if it weren't the constant incitements by Trump and all of his cronies.
Yeah, I mean, these are the kinds of issues that these guys literally have no legs to stand on, right? The rhetoric that's used every day by the types of people who quote unquote stormed the Capitol, which I hate using that rhetoric because it's like these guys went in there for photo ops. But the rhetoric that those guys used and the conspiracy theories that they push are regularly parroted by Republican officials, right? I think, it always annoys me to see Democrats try to out-reactionary the other side. When it's like, no, that's what they do. You'll never see Republicans trying to be more liberal or trying to be more environmentalist or trying to be more anything that the Democrats purport to be, right? But the Democrats are constantly trying to outdo the Republicans at their own game, and it's to their detriment and to the rest of us. As a New Yorker, I can speak to something quite similar to this, which is Donald Trump's Fifth Ave building, the Trump Tower, was already in a major tourist destination, right? Like Fifth Ave is a bunch of shops, high-end shops. You can, it's where a lot of people go to shop when they come to New York as far as tourists go. So it's always heavily populated. Rockefeller Center's over there. There's so much foot traffic already. And then when Donald Trump became the president, people weren't happy about it and would go visit his damn building all the time. So what was a cluster mess up, became even more messed up, Brett, because so many people were sort of picketing Donald Trump's building. And then what happened? NYPD decided to treat it like a war zone, and they basically occupied all of Fifth Ave for years. And it was basically impossible to get around down there. And this is essentially what the Democrats want to achieve in DC, because a bunch of people went and took pictures and stole laptops and did all the silly stuff that those stormtroopers did that day.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.